Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back, Speaking Truth in Love YouTube channel. Today, in this video, this will be part one of a two-part series discussing two aspects of the Mandela effect. And we're going to take a closer look at two of the areas that are at play right now, two of the areas that are really being pinpointed and targeted in what I believe is a controlled situation through this phenomenon. And we're going to take a look at the psychological aspect of that here in part one of this series. And I wanted to preface the video as we get started here by giving a little bit of a background about myself. And that's not to say that, I'm anything special or that I've done anything special in particular. But I do have a bit of a background in psychology and understanding the human mind. I have a bachelor's degree in human services and counseling, background there obviously closely tied to psychology, sociology, abnormal psychology, those kind of things. So I do have a little bit of a background there. I did not complete the master's. I took a job and decided to pursue that career instead of finishing my master's degree. So the bachelor's is what I have, but a few years of study and some actual work in the field in terms of counseling and actual therapy. So that's one thing that I wanted to point out. Another thing that I wanted to say is that at the beginning, in terms of the Mandela effect, my actual intent was to try to find enough information to prove that there was nothing to it, that all of it had to be, to some degree made up, or whatever the case may be. And so I decided to do some research on various aspects, different topics that people were talking about, saying that things were changed, that they were different from what they remembered before. And it was through my quest to try and find a way to debunk the theory that I actually had the experience myself. And so there were a couple of items, a couple of things that took place. I actually covered those on my channel, the Wizard of Oz and JFK. And there's a few more that I've been affected by as well since that time. But in trying to prove that it wasn't taking place, I actually was not able to do so. So that started my quest to really try to figure out exactly what was going on and why, if certain events never took place, how is it possible that I have these memories of them happening? So people are using terms such as confabulation, cognitive dissonance, and false memory to try and explain away this phenomenon. And as I look at it, I just don't see that those are adequate in really getting to the details and really getting to the core of what's causing this to take place and what people are truly experiencing. And it's through this series that I hope to be able to share some insight on that and hopefully maybe enlighten some people on a couple of aspects here. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the psychological aspect here today. And the first thing that we want to look at is this term that people are using, this term called confabulation. And the term confabulation is the making of bizarre or incorrect responses and a readiness to give a fluent but tangential answer with no regard whatever to facts to any question put, seen in amnesia and Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome. So basically, this is a situation where a person would be able to provide an explanation for whatever it is that they're seeing, regardless of the question, making of, it even says bizarre and incorrect responses, but also a readiness to give the answers. And so it talks about Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, which is basically a severe vitamin B1 deficiency, which is typically only seen in people who are post-surgery and maybe have been given IV that does not have the vitamin included. Oftentimes for people who are undergoing kidney dialysis. would be examples of situations in which a person might experience such a vast deficiency of vitamin B1 that they would fall into this category here in experiencing this syndrome. So confabulation in general, the readiness to give a fluent answer, which various aspects maybe seem to connect and touch, but in really thinking about it and really looking at the Mandela effect, I just don't see that it really fits. It says here, unconscious filling in of gaps in memory with fabricated facts and experiences. And so we have a major connection in reference to fabrication there, and basically that people would be just making things up in general. But as people who are, none of this is being made up. Now, we will point out, and I will say, there is no doubt that we do not fully understand the capabilities of the human mind, and we know very well that human memory is faulty. So saying that up front, we know those two aspects at least to be true. The human memory is not like a tape recorder. Things can be, mixed up and forgotten, and different aspects can be, affected by external factors and experiences. And that leads you into situations where you have creations of false memories. And that was another thing that I heard people try to say that was a way to explain this phenomenon. And if we take a look at this article on Scholarpedia, it is discussing false memories. And there's one aspect here, there's one of these that I want to point out in particular, but it does give an explanation of false memories, and we know, we understand what those are. Those are memories of events basically that did not take place, to put it quite simply. So it outlines factors that cause false memories, and inaccurate perceptions, inferences, interference, similarity, misattributions of familiarity. So there are lots of different things that come into play when you look at false memories. But I'm going to leave a link to this in the description here for this video. But it's this aspect of false memories that I wanted to focus on in particular. It's talking about false autobiographical memories. And the autobiographical memories are memories of something that actually took place, that a person experienced, and then being able to have false memories implanted there around that situation. And it cites four or five different experiments that took place in which people were able to be convinced, in one, that they were, as a child, lost in a mall or a supermarket. Another group was able to be convinced that they were taken on a hot air balloon ride when they were children. And these, of course, were events that never happened. And it talks about, through these experiments, how they were able to create these false memories. And one of the elements that they used that was a real aid in creating these false memories was implantation. And in the experiment featuring the hot air balloon, a photograph of a small child in a hot air balloon, and the photograph had been doctored, and they told these people that they actually took, that they were actually, the picture was of them, and they took this hot air balloon ride when they were children, and they simply did not remember it. And they were able to convince these people that they actually did have a hot air balloon ride, and it went one step further in the fact that these people actually were able to create a false memory of having gone on this balloon ride, and building other aspects around the false memory. This again coming from implantation. In the experiment where the child was lost in the mall or the supermarket, implantation was used again, where they had family members actually tell the person that this event took place. And when you consider that, when you have that element, people telling you that yes, this actually happened, and then with the functions of the human mind as we understand it, and we know and we have experiences through malls and supermarkets, we have experiences where children are lost or left behind, and we know those things, we've heard those stories, we've seen those things on the news, and we are able to then shape in our own minds this horrific and tragic event that happened to us in our childhood that actually never took place. But the other side, in terms of these autobiographical memories, would be an experience that happened to you that you know did happen, and then someone tries to convince you that it did not take place. And it talks about the difficulty in trying to remove a memory of a true event by telling you, and again, it doesn't outline specifically what factors would come into play there, how they would try to convince you, but in terms of trying to convince you that it did not take place, that would prove to be more difficult. And the reason why I'm looking at autobiographical memories in general is because when we talk about aspects and different parts of this Mandela effect, these memories, in my opinion, should be considered autobiographical memories. When you're talking about music and movies, vehicles, all these different things, these shape our lives, and they shape who we are. So it's not just a memory of a movie or an event per se. It's also the other things that come along with that. And you say, well, in your explanation there in your experiment, you say, well, they created other things that didn't even happen also. And that's very true. But you're looking at situations where you have a controlled group. You have basically a destined outcome for this experiment for those who actually are able to create the memory, right? So it's a controlled situation. You have a desired and a designed outcome, and you're able to interpret how you get there. And so if you say that, if you use that and say, well, then your argument falls apart, truth, because what you're saying just goes against itself. It really doesn't, right? Because what you're considering, or maybe what I should say, what you're not considering, is again a controlled experiment with a designed outcome and implantation of specific pieces of information that created these false memories. So it would be a suggestion that everyone who's experiencing this effect has somehow been subjected to the same implantation to create the same false memories that seem to be pretty consistent across the board. Now, I will say that some of these effects that people have tried to point out and say this is something that's changed, some of these they are not changing. Okay, so let's just get that out there. Some of these are not different. Sometimes people are confused about these things, and it's easy to understand why. The other thing is that not only are they not changing sometimes, we also have to consider that there has to be a share of people who indeed have cloudy memories about certain things and have been influenced by their viewing of videos and listening of conversations of people who are saying things seem to be different from what they remember. So we know that some of those people will have been influenced by that. I personally, in the two that I pointed out to you, was not influenced by anything except what I thought to be true in my own mind, which spurred my investigation and really wanting to get to the bottom of it. And so again, if you want to consider that these are not autobiographical memories that people are talking about, that these are not tied to life experiences, I think you've got some work to do there, at least for me, because life experiences are shaped by various aspects. The clothes that you have on right now, you bought them for a specific reason and you chose to get them instead of other clothes. Today you will go to a restaurant and eat, or you will go buy groceries or cook food at home that you chose over other groceries or over another restaurant. You drive the car that you drive because you chose it over another car. Okay? Yes, these things are, who you are, but you're still defined by the things around you. And you can't escape that. So your life experiences are created by the things that you have access to, and those are what shape who you are, and what shape those that's just it. That's what shapes who you are and who you become. And so in my opinion, these are definitely autobiographical memories, and it's going to be really difficult to argue that they're not. And so, do we have a situation in which various aspects of the population have been subjected to some type of implantation of false memories that's created the same memory for all of these people, even though everyone lives, works, breathes, and does everything right amongst everyone else? I mean, there's some explaining to do there. And so that's why, I think what we're looking at goes far beyond just the psychological aspect. And we'll get into that in part 2 if you stick around with me. One portion of this, though, that is very real, that is accurate in describing the Mandela effect and what we are experiencing, and that would be cognitive dissonance. And so cognitive dissonance in general, basically you might be confronted with new information that conflicts with what you typically would believe, and now you have a difficult time resolving it. And so the mental stress that you experience from that would be the similar to cognitive dissonance. In this article, it talks about smokers and lies that people tell themselves to continue to repeat and continue certain behaviors. As far as those types of things, again, I don't see a direct connection with the Mandela effect. But in terms of experiencing a true mental stress or trying to bring about some type of resolution, that, in my opinion, would be something that's very real and something that people are truly experiencing. Basically, the human mind is searching for a way to try and resolve conflict that it's experiencing. And in seeing the world one way and being introduced to the possibility that the world is a different way, that can create some real problems for us. That aspect is really a major part of what I believe to be a controlled phenomenon that we are experiencing in this Mandela effect and the quantum effect. Major psychological components that we're seeing here. In part 2 of the series, we're going to get out of the psychological aspects and get away from picking apart elements that I believe really do not explain in total what the experience is, what the effect is. And we're going to get more into what I believe is truly at the core and what's causing this to happen, and the major implications that I believe it has for humanity, towards our future, and the various, what I believe to be the various players in how that's going to actually come forward. So there's a lot to cover there. I hope that the video doesn't run too long. I know this one kind of ran a little bit long, but I wanted to cover those things. I'll leave links to in the description there to these articles that I've found this information on, and you can take a look at it yourself. I mean, look at the cognitive dissonance, look at the confabulation, look at false memories. Does it explain it? Right? If we're talking about false memories, what is your implantation? What's the experiment, right, that's taken place that's affected a portion of the population? Because regardless of whether things were different or whether they weren't, we've got something major to look at. A share of the population has been easily convinced that things took place that never did, right? Or we've got another share of the population that absolutely will not open their eyes to see what's going on right in front of their faces. So either way you look at this thing, there's still elements to it that we need to crack. And so that we'll get into that video here. Hopefully I'll be able to wrap it up in 2 videos. I'll try not to take too long, but I'm going to go ahead and close it out here for today. But again, if you're going through this experience, if you're still dealing with these things, understand that there's a reason for it. You are not alone, and what you're experiencing is very real. And if anyone wants to use any of these elements that I've pointed out, any of these specific terms, you want to use these things to tell me that what I'm experiencing falls into these categories and then explain it away and say it's done, then I'm sorry. You've still got more work to do. And understand that I'm looking at this very objectively, and that my intention from the very beginning was to prove that this was not taking place. I'm telling you, I've tried very hard to do that, and I cannot. So give that heavy consideration. If you have comments, leave your comments. If you like this information, thumbs up. If you don't like it, that's perfectly fine. Leave your comments on that as well. But I'm going to go ahead and close it out for tonight. And you guys take this information, look these things over, take a look at those links, and decide for yourself, is this what we're experiencing? Does this explain it all? I'll tell you right now, to me, it does not. And in part 2, we're going to get into what I really believe is at the core of this and where we're really headed with this phenomenon. All right, guys, that's it for now.